Ernest Rich is.
Right, I mean, if we ultimately found out who he was, we could do something like.
Are we owning stocks then? Is that some? I
We'd
mean, that
liquidate them.
seems unusual for a school district.
It is. It's
We're
highly
trying to
unusual.
Yeah,
it's highly unusual.
wasn't there like a $700 transfer fee just to
Yeah.
move it from the district
Yeah.
that didn't exist? District.
Which is why probably our auditors just like get rid of it.
So to get rid of them, what exactly are we going to do with them?
Put it in the general fund.
Okay.
But are we going to liquidate it? Or are we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Liquidate.
Yeah, so
That's not clear.
proposed actions, liquidate the stock.
Oh, there it is.
Yep.
Last line.
So then can I make a motion? I think we're just having a general discussion about it. That's
I
fine.
move that we follow I move that we direct the administration to carry out the proposed actions for the Ernest Rich Fund.
A second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And you want to talk about the
I know, I was thinking the same
Policy
thing.
monitoring.
The monitoring report, the very last thing on the monitoring report,
25.
says more guidance from the board is helpful regarding what data they would like to see for all of the subgroups listed within this policy, particularly yada, yada, yada. See that last number 6 on here? And so I thought maybe to Libby's benefit, we pull it and say, not that we have to do this moment, but how will we do this?
So my question there is how do I gather that data around family? Like what data would you see? It listed these subgroups under data the board would like to see about our student and family population. So one, how do I collect that data? I could just do surveys. That's going to be very limited. And when would you like to see it? And it's hard data to collect.
Right.
And it's private data. It could be private data to collect.
Don't look at me.
Don't.
I'm saying I didn't know either. So that's why.
What did you get for
I
the call?
saw this come out today from Central Vermont New Directions about the at-risk population and encouraging parents, kids from 6th grade to 12th grade parents to take this survey. I'm wondering if there's some way that would get at some of the gender identity, sexual orientation, marital status, identifying kids at risk. I'm wondering if we could get some sort of report out from that.
From the youth risk behavior surveys?
Mm-hmm.
I think we can. That's not out yet.
It's not out yet.
No. But yeah, when that comes out, we plan on fully analyzing that, and I will share those results from the board.
Because that might get to some of these.
It gets to some of them. Things it doesn't get to is marital status, family composition, that kind of thing.
Well, when I go back up to the original, the last line says the board will receive reports that monitors data to this end. So,
To the discrimination or discriminatory and equitable
right,
practices
so
within
maybe
the
that's,
district.
We talked about this in the different drafts of this policy, the data piece. And I feel like we had some indication from the administration at some point that everything was something that could be brought forward. It was achievable. I don't remember, we didn't get into specifics, did we, in those conversations when we were drafting this?
I think it could. I mean, we could bring information from survey data. This percentage of our student body identifies this way and has this family composition. As to
Would it be identifying in some cases?
it
though?
may very well be
Yeah.
identifying, and I would end that. If the answer is too small, I wouldn't state that to the board in any way, but I tell you that,
Yeah.
right? As far as how, I guess monitoring the policy makes me look at it a lot closer, right? And so how do I let the board know that we have or don't have equitable practices for groups of people that concern their marital status or family composition, or that's harder to,
I think
it's hard to say.
one thing we were looking for, you do have number 5 here that we're working on conflict resolution, but I would say incidents or complaints from students. You know, one thing that that really moved a lot of people's awareness was the students of color bringing complaints of specific incidents that they were experiencing. And the family composition thing, actually I added after hearing that a student who was
Thanks for coming, Michelle.
a student who was adopted and who was of a different ethnicity from their parents was upset about a class assignment where they had to write an essay about how resembling their parents affected their experience in life. And the student said, I can't write this essay. And the teacher said, yeah, you can. Go for it. So I doubt that was reported to anyone other than the student's friends, but you know, any kind of incident like that that does come to the attention of our administrators, if we can see a decline over time in those incidents arising.
So the issue of reported discrimination, that would be the data.
Right.
In preference to who
Right.
falls in that category. Maybe it doesn't matter if nobody's being discriminated against. I know that sounds a little strange, but if we had some accounting of reports.
Incidents, yeah. Because I think, you know, we have a tendency to think, oh, everybody's happy here, everybody's nice to each other, and then we hear from students that that's not the case, but it's...
Actually, I was thinking, as you talked about it, maybe it wouldn't be bad if the incidents reported went up, if that was...
Initially.
Right. Yeah.
I'm going to grapple with that a little bit more. Is that okay?
I was just remembering that I think that's what we were talking about, was student, you know, the student experience of feeling
Marginalized.
I have a question on it.
Yes.
Number 4 under compliance. And it is correct, we have not addressed religion on our policy and on our data measures. And we've been asked to do so.
Sort of curious.
I talked to a former school board member about the religion policy that the former district had that was not picked up by the new district. There wasn't any institutional memory left on the board about the origin of that policy, so I think the policy committee just thought, well, this isn't a VVSBA policy, like maybe this is just an out-of-date policy, so it wasn't in the first tranche of things where we were doing all of the required policies.
Well,
But it turns out it was never a VSBA policy, and it had been a very specific community effort to address religion. And it's a very thoughtful, it's very detailed. I mean, it goes to the level of a procedure in some cases, I would say, but it was addressing scheduling, awareness of holidays, curriculum, how religious holidays are acknowledged in the classroom or not, music, education around religion, the difference between teaching about religion and celebrating religious holidays. And so it's something that we should we should look at that policy again and think about whether we didn't address the issue enough.
When I was having conversations with the group who brought this to my attention, we looked at that policy together and came to, well, I don't want to speak for other people. However, it was my understanding in the conversation that I was saying I'm monitoring the equity, diversity, inclusion policy upcoming because it was very recent. And I said, I wonder if just adding religion to that policy suffices the need from this particular organization, and they said yes, it would, instead of having a separate policy. Because we got into lots of good conversations around when that policy was written, we had a different population of students. So which religions do we teach and which don't we? And how do I get my teachers trained on all of the religions of the world? And how do I get them experts so they're not just talking about matzo balls? And how, like I was asking some questions around that kind of thing, which is my reading of the original policy, the religion policy, was asking our teachers to do. So they were like, those are all very good questions. I think you just need to put in your equity policy. That was the final kind of conversation point. But I don't also want to speak for them.
Yeah, how would that look? I mean, I
don't have
would
the
just
policy
have to
right
look
in
at
front of me.
the
Right,
policy
but
itself.
we-
My understanding is the big issue is kind of awareness, especially awareness of, like this, we have our calendar and scheduling tends to revolve around primarily Christian holidays, and I think there's some awareness of Jewish holidays and very little awareness of, Muslim, Hindu, even other major religious holidays, and virtually no awareness of minor religious occurrences. So, when we schedule, something on Yom Kippur, that creates a problem for a lot of our families.
Yep, we had those conversations. Jim has been involved with myself and Anna as we've made steps already to pull lists of all the major holidays and make sure that everybody has those. So they're not scheduling field trips and they're not scheduling big track meets and things like that happen this fall. We messed up this fall, right? So we're going to fix that through other means too. I'm not sure policy's going to help. Like if we need to take that step or not.
But adding something to the equity policy might,
Like
Be
remind us
appropriate.
even when you're doing it.
Yeah.
yeah. And it would remind you in monitoring that
Yes.
that's something that's
Yeah.
being monitored for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think whenever we have these discussions about religion, I talk to my wife about these. I can't help but think about two of my best friends in high school practiced Ramadan, and they wouldn't eat for a month during the days, and all day long they were hungry and having to go to school, and they were brothers. One of them was the goalie on our soccer team, and like 30 minutes before a match was going to begin, he was eating for the first time all day, and I just felt for him. But there are a lot of different considerations. I don't know exactly how a school schedules around all of these different
I mean, and it practically can't make everything stop, but I think an awareness and an attempt, and I think also knowing the demographics of your community too.
It's just more of an even distribution across the calendar year, rather than making sure all the sporting events don't fall on one religious holiday or one religious tradition versus another. That would really be the best case scenario, is that everybody has one sporting event that they can go home and celebrate with a traditional festive meal.
A traditional.
I think it might be helpful, and this is going farther than we're contemplating, but to invite in either families or probably families would be parents of non-Christian faiths and ask them, like, which days of the year are really non-negotiable, because we don't, as I don't know. I know there are differences in the seriousness of, different holidays, and it's gonna be a big problem to schedule an event on this holiday, but not necessarily that holiday. And if we just asked,
So again, I ask how. So how do I ask people when I'm not identifying their religion for them?
Could you use a Google form asking?
I could.
could you
asking
put
our
it in the
families?
principal's newsletter? Hey, if you want to help us learn about what's important, contact us.
Good. Yeah.
I think also Jim's point about an awareness, the bottom line for me would be I wouldn't want you penalized. So
Right.
if you took off today because of some holiday that was important to your religion, I don't want the teacher to be giving you a guff or you to lose something because of it. You know, that's sort of, to me, the bottom line.
You know, I wonder, do we have this data already? If we went back and we
People's
looked at
religion?
and we looked at attendance records, and we found that there were certain weeks throughout the year that we were having high absent rates because there was a tradition that was being celebrated that didn't fit with the school calendar.
I don't know if our N size is big
Yeah.
enough to be able to pull that
I mean,
out.
it might be.
You might not be able to do it just from that, because some students might come and feel very conflicted, you know, families might feel conflicted where they want their kid to do well on, they have an exam that day and they want them to do well on that exam, but, you know, they're not
They could come after.
practicing on that.
We have ideas of how to work through this. It's just in terms of a policies perspective, this particular organization asked if the policy committee would consider adding religion to the equity, diversity, and inclusion policy.
I thought it was already on there, so it's
It's not.
just, yeah, I think it's certainly
Not
worth.
bad.
I think you can put that in the oversight category.
Yeah.
Thank you for that discussion. I move that we accept the monitoring report.
A second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Along to the next ritual, yes.
You want to schedule?
Yeah, I can give a brief
Yep.
overview and you can fill in. So, our Pietro Lynn, the attorney who does work for the district, contacted us. He's apparently been in touch with some other attorneys, and there is a class action lawsuit that is being put together against a company, Jewel, for basically practices that target youths for their products. And as you're probably all aware, the more we know about vaping and kind of smokeless tobacco and, you know, et cetera, the more we're realizing that the health risks are huge, the addiction risks are huge, and there does appear to be a very deliberate attempt to market these products to kids as a component. So I see several upsides to this, very few downsides. It would be a litigation focused on holding the company accountable for their practices targeting kids, with the possibility of a large settlement that I think would both be punitive for the company, hopefully result in changes in their practices, if not, you know, changes in their business model. And it has potential to bring not insubstantial funds into the district as part of a settlement award. And I think, you know, as long as we continue to check, it's very legit, and it seems to be very legit.
You wouldn't send it to us if it weren't.
Yeah, Pietro would not send it to us if it weren't. I don't see any real negative downsides. I think the community would be supportive, and yeah, I'm certainly supportive, so.
Would it do more than just target, would this lawsuit potentially establish precedent for other vape makers as well? I know Juul is like the big game in town, but.
It could, yeah. I mean, it could certainly send a signal that you know, that if you target kids, the school districts will come after you, and it's okay.
And has this lawsuit already been filed, and there's just more parties that are joining, or how?
I got the impression from the email that it was in the works. I don't know if it's been filed yet or not.
So we wouldn't have any attorney fee liability?
It's a contingency?
It's a contingency?
Yes.
I'm assuming that, or is it going to be filed in Vermont, or is it a national? Let's see.
I don't think it's being filed until March.
So
There was an
if
article on
we
it.
win,
and there's-
Pietro gets paid, but do we?
Well, that was going to be my next, is
What are
Pietro
our
counsel in
terms?
this, or is he just
He was
referring us?
contacted.
He was contacted. I think he sent us an article, and it's been a few days since I read it, from the Los Angeles Times about this. So I think it may be originated in California.
What would our
He said
liability?
other districts in Vermont are interested.
There are 4 already who have signed on.
4 who signed up. Do you know who they are?
Yes. Should I say that now? Hold on, let me bring it up.
Oh, you've been told not to say it?
Nope.
Okay, then go ahead.
Okay.
Must be public knowledge.
It will be.
Well, if they haven't filed suit, it might not be public knowledge.
Maple Run, which is St. Albans, Essex Westford, Addison Northwest, Colchester, and others will join.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
Do we have to, well,
In principle, I'm all for it. I don't know what type of liability would be exposed to, and expenses we could be exposed to.
Be exposed to.
I mean, the only possible one is if it was, I mean, I can't imagine it's such a baseless case that they'd be able to go after us for fees.
Right, that's a pretty high standard.
It's a very
There
high
could be
standard.
discovery,
It could be some,
you
yeah.
know, so you could end up with having to turn over documents and search
That's
for
what I was
records and
wondering
have
if
your
we have
administrators
any-
get deposed, could happen in any lawsuit.
do we have any basis, beyond obvious to claim that our kids are harmed? I mean,
And we know
Yes.
they're used, right?
Yeah, are you asking whether or not our kids are using
oh,
these
no, I
products?
know that the kids are using the products. That is not a question.
Yeah.
But I just don't know, you know, Bridget was saying that if they charge us for discovery, they're looking for documents. Do we have, I guess we have documentation of when we've caught kids, but,
We would have documentation of when we've caught kids. We'd also have documentation of, going back to what Becky talked about yesterday, or a little while ago, about the youth behavior survey. The report out, self-reporting data.
Could it potentially have been health records of students?
No.
Are you
Jim, is there a point at which if we're going to discuss possible evidence the district might have, that we would do this in executive session, whether we do or do not have evidence that might support it? I don't know whether it makes sense to have that be on the public record if we're considering litigation. If we're, you know, the decision to engage in litigation is not something that we would necessarily put into a closed session, but if there's something that would disadvantage or advantage, you know, in the case, I just don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not even sure what our litigation approval process is. Whether who, yeah.
Yeah,
whether
I mean,
it can be-
we've done some amicus briefs and the board has approved
but we haven't.
participating.
We
but-
haven't been plaintiff in a suit,
No, we haven't,
which is why I thought it would be good to discuss it with the board because I'm not.
yeah.
And
It feels
why-
like a decision the board should make. to
Yeah,
me.
that's
It feels like
my-
a decision the board should make.
why would it be
That's
the
my opinion,
school
too.
district suing them? Why wouldn't it be the parents?
Well,
Because
I
the school
mean,
district incurs costs.
yeah, the theory would be that the school districts are incurring some particularized harm
Yeah.
in dealing with the problem, I assume. I haven't read about the claims, but that would be the theory.
Does it make sense that you and Jim maybe would see the specific
You can ask if there's a
written
complaint.
So you, I mean, it's hard to answer when you don't know, or do you have that already?
What's the timing? What's the timing of the need for a decision?
Right. Suppose,
Pietro got in touch with me last week. I emailed Jim and Renee, the high school principal, to see what their thoughts were. Renee immediately was like, I'm all in. They're targeting our kids. Jim and I talked about it on Friday. I asked Pietro a couple more questions like who's joining and did he see any potential downfall, and he said no. Did not, as our lawyer, and he told me the other districts that have already signed on. And then he sent me just this afternoon a client representation agreement. So I don't know. He hasn't told me, like, you need a drop dead date.
Could we, just to propose, what do people think about a motion to have Jim, I don't know how the chair and vice chair feel about exploring this, taking a look at this language, and then next meeting we could vote on it.
Right, you could tell us if you see any big disadvantages to doing this.
Maybe we could have a discussion next meeting in executive session if we feel like that's called for.
Just give both of you an opportunity to look it over a little more as the chair and vice chair and lawyer.
We are not the school district's lawyers.
No, not the school district lawyers, but yeah, that's important to distinguish.
Who's the client, who's the form between us and who? Who's the sign-on as a client representation letter?
The district.
Lynn and Lynn.
The district.
And
Lynn and Lynn is Pietro's law firm.
Pietro's firm, okay.
And then
Okay.
So that,
So
yeah,
they are the
Fraser
council.
PLC and Melee PLLC, so we'd have to look and see exactly who they are.
I propose that you guys look at it and tell us next time what you
Yeah.
think.
so they may have stepped in for the Vermont schools, is what I'm guessing, if this is a national thing. They may be rounding up all the Vermont schools.
I think, yeah.
So we need to at least understand our relationship with them and whatever might come back
Yeah.
from them.
Okay, so let's investigate further, but there's, in general,
Yes.
yes,
Major public health issue facing our kids.
figure out what potential liability the district could incur if things go sideways.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Or if we just have particularly aggressive defense counsel who want to make us feel pain for doing this. I think, are there any focus if you are?
So this is less me talking and more asking the board to look at the enrichment data that we have right now in terms of the money that's been spent. The board has discussed on numerous occasions how much and what we want to put in our budget in regards to enrichment after-school activities. And as Grant and the administrative team and myself are forming this year's budget, I was interested in you looking at the data that we have thus far and having a discussion amongst yourselves around where we want to go with this. Because a decision could significantly impact other things that we're looking at in the budget process. So there's no real learning here other than here's the data. Discuss what we want to do in terms of future budget.
And maybe you would explain to the finance team that we had spent more this year on the after-school program than we had anticipated.
Yes, we did spend, we are spending more on after-school enrichment than anticipated for several reasons. So the budget that you see here in fiscal year 20, canoes, life jackets, paddles, kayaks, and trailers were repossessed by people, and we had to buy new ones. So for our PE classes to use. So that was an unanticipated equipment fee, which we used fund balance money for. The bridges program at Roxbury was more than anticipated in the budget. It was brought to our attention after the budget process, after the budget had been voted on last year in the spring. So that was more. And currently, the parent contribution hasn't come in quite at the exact rate that we thought it would come in at this point in the year. That could change over time as Drew is starting a new program, and technically, and he's learning his ways around what he can and cannot do after school. So.
So what are your questions to us?
So the question is, the board has discussed putting more money in our enrichment budget. Do we pay for it all? Do we not pay for it all? Why do we pay for some enrichment activities and not other enrichment activities? And so right now, we will budget for basically, again, how this year has gone, should the board not give us other guidance. But if the board wants more money put in that, then you need to tell us now because we're going to have to cut somewhere else.
Why would we put the way you said it, it sounds like we're putting more money in some enrichment activities and less money in others. Is that true?
No, it's just differently spent. So we budget for sports. We don't charge kids for sports. But we charge kids for mountain biking. You know what I mean? So it's just differently spent. Yeah.
But all the things that fall under enrichment are sort of funded in the same manner. You don't.
Yes.
You don't fund more for canoes than you do for
Oh,
kayaks.
no.
Yeah.
No, that's funded in the same manner.
Yeah. It's kind of the bucket of what do we call enrichment and what do we call extracurriculars and sports.
Yeah. Is there anything else? Is there anything else in that category? You got sports and then all these things. Do we
There's
have
there's
other- we have
music,
clubs?
there's clubs,
drama,
music,
that's,
yeah.
You know.
There are some things that we offer from the co-curricular perspective that,
That are also covered in the way sports is.
yes.
Isn't the plague? I mean, isn't the
We have
drama
sports
program?
teams that fundraise though quite a bit.
When sports teams fundraise, they're fundraising for,
Extra
extra.
fancy jackets.
Yeah, fancy jackets or things with their name across the back of them, or, you know, they're funding for things that are not going to be school district property after the season is over, that the kids are going to take home themselves.
And busing for transportation.
That's
for
included in the co-curriculars.
I had I'm sure that Libby could tell the same stories, but I had a interesting experience with Drew in the last month. I went on an overnight camping trip with the kids who were learning kind of like the outdoor wilderness skills. And we went over to Groton. It was a wonderful, wonderful time. I had a fifth grader and a seventh grader in that after-school program. And Drew and I got to sleep in a lean-to together and talk and about kind of what's going on with the program and kind of challenges. And I got to observe firsthand some of the dynamics. And first of all, Drew's incredible, number one. And his ideas are huge. And I know that what's out there is a ton of potential. I kind of feel like Drew sees it all as his own kind of, he does it, and it would be nice if it was a team. There were more humans to execute the plan, because there's only so much that can be done with the resources. I'm sure it's true throughout the school district. But one of the real challenges I could see, and then it played out immediately afterwards, was that 5th through 8th is a big range in middle school, and it's really tough to design a single after-school activity that would serve all those kids, and he was trying to do that, but what he saw was that it's hard to keep kids, like for instance, like if you had an outing kind of club or something and you tried to run that, you really need to dramatically change what you're offering from the younger to the older in order to keep the older interested. And so then, then we had the signups for the next section, and my oldest was like, I'm not doing that again. And I'm like, why? Since I was the oldest kid, and it wasn't, and I knew all that stuff already, right? And it was too bad, because it's such a great program, but I get it, and I just see that there's so much potential. And so I would definitely advocate for the resources to let that vision kind of bloom a little bit more anyway, before we kind of box it in with resources. And so it's a big responsibility to put on one person's shoulders. I mean, I know he has the support of the administration, but it is a tough job for.
On the other hand, this is sort of a new program that's just started and hasn't even played out. And my first reaction, right,
It's 2 months.
my first reaction would be to play it out another year in the budget as it has been this year, and then tend to, even what would he think he needed, and he'd have a better idea.
Yeah, Drew is fantastic. I want to make sure that we say that on public record. And I keep pushing him to get his license, so we can use him even more powerfully.
That would be fantastic, exactly.
And pay him more. And one of the, it's a new season, right? So he was saying, I was just talking to him the other day, he's like, look, fall sports teams are big. They're larger teams, right? And so he's like, that takes a lot of kids who might be interested in the things I can offer. So I didn't get as many people who I thought I'd get for the fall. Winter teams are smaller, and there might be less of them. So I'm counting on more kids signing up for skiing and, like all the bigger programs that he typically actually runs. So he's playing with numbers still and learning what to expect from just seasons in sports alone.
So I think he'll have a better idea after another year of what he needs.
One of the things I know that he's experienced, or we've experienced as parents, is scrambling to find advisors basically for the different projects. So it's not just him running from one to the next, doing it himself only. Or at least getting a co-person to help him with some of those things. And I don't know how successful that is. I don't know how well that's going, but I think it's limiting or directing kind of what he can offer and what he can't.
Yeah, and that's been a new experience for us financially too. Like is it a contractor contract that we offer? Is it a co-curricular? Then they become our employees, but they're not really our employee. You know, like it gets tricky, and then who's insurance? It gets really just the business logistics and bureaucratic structure of how we have to run our finances. Sure. We're learning that still. We're making it work right now, but I know that he's feeling a lot like he has to do it all because it's the easiest way to do it because he's already our employee. Yeah. So yeah, we've had to learn how to do that.
So on the finance side, the estimated compared to the budgeted amount, that difference, have we addressed that previously, how we're going to cover that?
Well, we don't have to buy canoes or kayaks now, we've got
Well, no.
No, but
It's the current fiscal year, if you only have a certain amount budgeted.
Say it again, I'm sorry.
So there's about a $40,000 difference between what was budgeted and what you're estimating is going to be needed for the program for the year. Have we had a discussion yet about how that's going to be covered?
I mean, it was mentioned in the first quarter report. It's one of the things that we're over on.
But
And these costs are addressed in the
Thus
fund
far, we
balance
pulled it
section.
from fund
We-
balance.
Are you
So
asking how
normally-
we cover it this year or
normally-
what about next year?
I'm talking about right now, fiscal year
Normally,
20.
we get a proposal to move things from
Right.
fund balance,
Yeah.
and we haven't seen that.
Yeah, that's what
Sorry,
I'm
Grant
that's what
is
I'm
on
getting
that.
at.
Grant is on that kind of
Yeah.
thing.
I was wondering what the plan is.
I think he's waiting to see what happens, right? So just the fall thing I was just talking about.
Yep.
You know, like we could get way more kids in the winter taking part
So
of our
more
enrichment,
program fees.
which means
It
more
looks like
parental
that's
involvement.
already baked in here, at least in the 21 budget. Oh, no, it's in here as well.
You have your actuals there, and we don't know what the estimate is for
It's
a full
very-
year.
Right,
Right? So we haven't gone through a full year yet.
yeah.
So it's hard to know what to ask for. Yeah, that's what I guess I'm getting at.
Okay. My question to you is how, and I think you just answered it, but I just want to make sure we're all clear. How do you plan to cover that difference if it ends up being the estimated amount? What is going to be the proposal? Is it going to be use fund balance? Is it going to
For
be
this,
shift
for
from
this
elsewhere?
fiscal year, we will ask to use fund balance.
Okay. I wasn't certain if there was another area of the budget.
Sometimes the budget.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
But it's a little
Yeah.
early because it's
Yeah.
only
Yeah.
first quarter, so
Yeah.
it's hard to know where that will land.
Yes, but should that not happen, should
Okay.
he not be able to figure it out in other ways, we'd ask for how to fund balance.
Okay.
The Juul settlement.
Yeah, the Juul settlement. Drew would be psyched.
Isn't that, well, that's kind of how we got the scoreboard in the middle school, right? It was like Coke's apology for giving the kids so much sugar. I think.
Yep.
I'm comfortable continuing the current level of funding, given the
Yeah,
newness of
too.
the program. I mean, it doesn't sound like we have a specific proposal for, we need X to do something else.
And
So-
honestly, it sounds like because we really don't know yet. We haven't played out a year.
Let us play out a year.
You'll let us play it out.
Is that kind of what you're recommending, is that keep it the way it is? I mean, because otherwise you might come in here and go, you know what, we're seeing this, that really this isn't going to work unless we add X, or, you know, we're not really saying that, are you?
No, I'm not saying it's not gonna work. I think we're servicing very similar amount of kids as we have in the past through this programming. It's just now we're dealing with it's just financial and bureaucratic things that we have to figure out
Yeah.
and let it play. I would recommend to the board that we budget this year based on what we are thinking this year's cost, or budget next year, sorry, based on what we've thought about already, and bumping it a little for the bridges piece, because we know they're gonna come out and ask us for more about that. And then let's figure out how, like, what we really want.
For the next year.
And we did discuss this during finance committee. I mean, the issue of bridges, it is something that deserves evaluation, because that's about 20% of the resources, which for after school, which is going to this bridges program. The question is, could we, use might we be able to provide more for the same amount of money, or provide the same amount for a little bit less?
Bridges is part of the 21st Century Grant, and so we have to decide whether we stick with that grant or it would be cheaper to do it on our own.
We're paying, that money goes to,
Central fund.
yeah.
One thing that might be interesting to in this question, I don't think is answered in here, is to look at the ages of the kids or the grades of the kids who are taking advantage of the program. Am I missing it, or is it not here?
Did I ask that question?
You break it out by high school and middle school, but
I'm sorry, I think even more fine sort on it, I think we might see some real trends in that. I think that the intersection of the enrichment and the childcare kind of family need versus enhanced enrichment, and I think you can see it pretty clearly in the middle school that it moves pretty quickly from young to old in terms of the family that has much less need for childcare, or perhaps the kids are more resistant to childcare as they get older. Either way, it drops off fast, and yet we really want to be doing enrichment for those kids who maybe they aren't attracted to it naturally, but it may be also the types of program we're offering aren't attracting those kids. And so if there's no family need, maybe we don't need to spend the money unless we see it as a value to do enrichment. So I just think maybe if we knew ages, it would help us sort that out a little more.
And we'll know better, as she was saying, difference between fall sports, winter sports, once we have a year of data.
Mm-hmm. And Drew, I think, has been putting some effort into learning what he can offer the high school in particular.
Yeah.
You'll see that kind of down at MHS.
How can he be in 2 places at once?
He's a busy man.
Incredible.
And we were
Yeah,
we were previously spending between 40 and 50.
Oh,
Annually,
more
or was
than
it-
that.
Yeah.
For
We were
community connections.
giving community connections last year. It was budgeted, like 37,000
Okay.
was budgeted for community connections, and parents were paying on top of that.
Mhm. And this year, we're looking at 93,000 for the same services, and parents are
You're
paying
including
on that?
bridges now, so you
Bridges.
Oh, yeah,
that out.
take bridges out, so it's
And the
78,000.
equipment you have to take out. That was
Oh,
a
yeah,
one-time
yeah,
thing.
yeah. So 60,000. But are we getting better value for that money from your perspective?
I think that's yet to be determined.
Okay. Because it is, 20, 23, 24,000. It's almost, it's like a 40% increase in what we're spending for the same end result. And the question is the result better? Are more kids participating? And we don't know the answer to that. Are,
We need a
more-
year.
We are providing a higher quality job for Drew than he had.
Yes.
I believe,
That-
which
is
is also, was also a goal of the change.
It's also kind of a false comparison, since the other program, at least when you think about things like the insurance, the vans, the insurance like that, those things weren't really going to be able to be continued the way they were anyway.
Mhm.
So we have to be careful not to, there would have been some escalation in cost. We had tried to keep it outside the building, outside this district anyway.
The other thing, Steve, to that end as well, the other thing that is not contributing to that, which is an enormous factor, was that basically the fees that UES parents were paying Community Connections for the after-school care were paying for the middle school programming. So we gave $36,000 to Community Connections. However, the reason why they were able to do enrichment programming was because UES was a very large moneymaker for them.
And so, you know, it was almost like an add-on because UES was such a big moneymaker.
So
in that
now
sense.
It's too soon.
Now UES is served by Part 2.
As well as MSMS. There's 7 to 15 kids in that too.
Are parents paying less?
It depends on their socioeconomic status.
I think it's
So,
just too soon.
so Part 2 is also at the middle school. So we have, in addition to this program at the middle school, we also have a childcare program at the middle school.
Yes.
That only serves younger kids.
That only serves younger kids and doesn't cost us
Doesn't
anything.
cost the district anything.
Okay. So we do have, and we have somewhat expanded our after-school options.
Oh, we have definitely expanded our
That's
after-school
what
options.
that's
in
what I
that
was
way.
asking.
I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
wasn't including Part 2 in that. We have most definitely
Yeah.
expanded our after-school options.
I mean, it's only November 6th. I mean, I don't know how we can possibly assess what we're doing with it. It's just too soon.
But it does seem
Well,
like,
we can do an extent if we're offering like double the programs that we were before, and we have double the students enrolled this time of year. That's all I'm saying is, I think it's worth assessing. What, we're 3 months into the school year? It's worth at least saying,
Yeah,
how are we
because-
doing?
Yeah.
Especially if we're being asked to say, do we want to continue doing it?
Well, it's now or never because we're building a budget. So,
right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah,
It's
we
the
only have 3
problem,
months, so we
building
do
budget
a
early.
minor assessment, and then we move on, we just say, you know what, we don't have enough data, let's
Yeah.
keep going, and then
Yeah.
do
That's
this
why I'm
again a year
saying,
from now.
let's
and
keep
be a lot
on with what
better.
we've got and see how the year plays out.
I would say though, from the reckoning we just did, that it's looking decent. I mean, our net expenditure is greater, but we have added programming and when we're providing better quality employment, so.
Yeah, and that's the general story that I'm trying to dredge out of this, because we're looking at, you know, if I'm a taxpayer who's watching this closely, I'm like, okay, you guys were spending $37,000 before, now it's $93,000. We can explain the bridges component that's in
equipment,
there, and the
Which
equipment,
won't be next year.
which comes out of there. But then, you know, there is enhanced, if we're offering more programming, that's, you know, that's part of it. I'm just looking at what's going on the municipal side, and I think that there's a very distinct chance that there's going to be some budgetary pressures this year on us that we haven't had in the past couple of years because of major health insurance overages and I think municipal tax rates.
And infrastructure.
At least they don't have to manage special education.
He started steep.
You know, I think the other part of the
That is
analysis
something
would be to look at the Part 2 pieces going, and what parents are doing with that and all that, but I think we can wait on that because it doesn't have a direct budgetary impact, but it will be part of our overall assessment of whether the decisions we've been making are going in the right direction.
That's a good end of the year.
Yeah.
I actually just spoke to them today about some of their numbers and things like that.
Great. Maybe then
At
at
what
some
point
point.
Do we have
they
to, but at what point do we have to renew the contract or not? I assume that you do that, but isn't there a?
They are going to do summer programming, and I mean, it's kind of a year-round continuation. So unless we see significant reason to not use them.
So there's not an
continue.
actual contract that has an end date?
No.
It has to be renewed.
They will be doing after summer programming starting up right after school.
Well, we have a contract with them, right?
There must be
Term
some
of the
provision in the
contract.
contract
Yeah.
about renewal or termination or something.
I'd have to check.
So that, because that just might be a timing point.
Yes, I'd have to check.
With ample time. I mean, we should probably be looking at, you know, just to do that kind of due diligence. Hey, we made huge changes, and now let's go back and reflect, and how are we feeling about these changes? And, you know, how is the community feeling about these changes? And it'd be great to have them come in, or whoever, and not yet, but at some point, like, you know, in January or something maybe, or March.
Yeah. No,
That's a different topic.
That's a different topic, exactly.
Did you need something? from
Yeah,
us?
do you need
No,
something?
no,
Well,
so
did anyone
what I'm
wanna say-
understanding from the discussion is that we're gonna budget similarly, similarly to how we budgeted this year, using perhaps more of our actuals And the board is okay with that?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. That's it.
Great, perfect. So now we are on to board discussion. District enrollment, MHS class sizes for And motion to, and with the action item being to approve the one FTE hire for fiscal year for the middle school. So I'll open it up for discussion. Let's everyone scroll through the data, which,
I have a general question.
other than wanting to take dystopian fiction, I don't have.
So
I would think Irish
Or I know you
Americans.
could just watch the news, but.
Hold on, we're talking about what high school classes we went to.
So we have this, what you can see in the red and yellow table here, and we were talking with Grant about this before, is you can see a bubble moving up in terms of class size. And there's a distinct possibility that, our average class size will go back into our sweet spot, 2-3 years from now in MSMS. So what are you thinking about, Libby, in terms of a plan for addressing this hump?
I'm glad you asked that question, Andrew. So, in discussing this at length with Pam, and Jim knows this as well, as we're projecting out 3 years of what our needs are academically and social emotionally, hiring one FTE now to address the bubble of kids that will be there for the next 2 years, because after this year, right? So it's a 6th grade class now that is large, and then in 7, 8, right, will continue to be large. Once that bubble moves through, moving that FTE into an intervention position, which is needed at the middle school as well, and will continue to be needed. So that's the idea, is that it wouldn't always be in a classroom teacher piece. It would move into a teacher support, not a IA, but a support for either SEL or academic enrichment or intervention.
And are you thinking it'll be the same person, or are you thinking that there's going to be attrition? Every year there's a certain amount of attrition, and with one of those teaching positions, you'll repurpose that?
That is really hard to answer because it depends on licensure.
Right.
Middle school licensure is a beast, so you could be hired under a K-6 license, so you could teach up to 6th grade, all content areas, or there's a middle level endorsement, not 612, a middle level endorsement, which is a content specific, so you could only teach 7th grade math, for instance. So it really depends who the hire is and what their licensure availability is.
So do you think you might hire under a 1-year contract for next year and a 1-year contract for the next year, because an interventionist might want to have other skills?
If I'm
It wouldn't continue to be, well, if you're hiring any new teacher, it's a provisional for 2 years. So technically, when you really get down to it, you're hiring for, it's a provisional, right? So as long as
It's provisional, but I'm trying to be honest up to the teacher I'm hiring to. So I might say, okay, this is a 6th grade position. You might be certified to teach 6th grade, right? This year. But then you're not certified, perhaps, to teach 7th.
Many middle-level educators have dual licensure, so we have to. It's funny. It's a tricky beast, right? Yeah. So we want to hire the best person for the job, and plenty of our educators have multiple licenses. So it's an FTE. I don't want to think of it as a person. I want to think of it as an FTE. And where do we need that FTE at the middle school? Currently, we need it at that bubble of kids, which is a classroom teacher.
Did we not approve this yet?
No.
No, we
But
don't.
this is the same thing we talked about before.
It is the same.
So has somebody actually registered for this, into 6th grade? The last board meeting, you said a family was coming in to bump it up and they hadn't registered yet. Did they actually register?
I don't know that answer.
But it sounds like we're on this collision course regardless.
We are on the collision course regardless. As I said, last meeting, I think we had 35 new students enroll to middle school this summer.
We're on this collision course, but the when we need to hire them does not necessarily come about unless there's somebody here to.
I guess the question is whether we want to have that volatility at all times, or whether we want to have the position. Yeah.
Steve?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the issue. Remember, we entered this fiscal year irresponsibly close to the line. That's one way to look at it, right? Is that, and therefore we put ourselves in a position where mid-year we're doing a hire. Is that right?
Yes.
I mean, I'm not saying we were irresponsible. I'm saying that you could argue that we were. We were so close. We talked about that at the last meeting, that, like, maybe we should have done that.
I don't
But
think we were irresponsible.
I
We
know
were
you don't.
over the limit.
We were in the yellow.
But see, the
Yeah.
thing is,
Yeah.
the difference between
The line
being
was in the
over a
yellow.
limit, which compels you to action, versus looking at your ideal, is a really important distinction. And I think that what we try to do is be closer to the optimal, and then if we get close to that line, we know we're playing with fire. And in this case, we got burned. And so I'm not thinking in retrospect, we might do the exact same thing, but the point is that there's a good reason to step back from the edge, and whether or not, we cross the over or not. And so if we step back from the edge, we don't have to be so reactive. My question, though, was, you had said, Libby, that we need an interventionist. Are we prepared to wait until the 22-23 year to get that interventionist? I mean, if you know now that you would ideally have one, and we're going to see the bubble start to relax at that point, is then the time to hire the extra FTE for that, or do you feel like, well, there's still partial bubble there, or I'm just wondering how you, to me, it's an easy one to say, look, we're going to use the FTE through 21-22, then that position may evaporate because we won't need it. That's fine. It's it's hard personnel decisions, but it's the way it goes. But then what about this interventionist and putting it off for that long?
My best answer for that, Steve, which is a very good question, is the administrative team has prioritized needs. And right now, the intervention position at MSMS, while has been a seated need, has not reached the priority level of other areas.
Yeah.
So there are large priorities that we can only ask for so much in a budgetary year, and we have prioritized other things.
Yeah, so that's by no means sort of the hard plan, is that position will become an interventionist. It just sounds like it could be, because you may need it earlier, or you may decide at that point that that's still not the need.
As we think 3 years out, which we are thinking right now, is what are we prioritizing next year versus the year after versus the year after. As of what we know right now from our system and our needs at this moment in time, which could very well change, that is what our plan is.
Yeah.
You had said before there was something about getting the system in order also before you needed those people. So I assume you're still working on that.
Is the maximum of 25, I'm seeing the way it was presented here, it looks like it's greater than 18 or less than 25. Doesn't look like it's less than or equal 25, but I might just be looking at that too literally.
It's less than 25.
So if we're at 25, are we indeed at 25 right now? Because we have yellow as 25 close to the max.
As soon as, if we get one more student in the 6th grade, we'll be at
Okay.
25.
Okay.
We're at 99.
So the red boxes are where we're at 25, and the yellow boxes are where we're at 24.
Well, it says 25 and it's in yellow.
That's wrong then, huh?
Where are you?
19 to 20.
Current year.
16 may have included.
That's
I don't know.
Yeah.
That should be
That's-
right.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying, are we actually already at max? And that,
My understanding is currently, without this particular student registered, this poor student registered, that we have 99 students in 4 6th grade classrooms. So we have.
We're right there.
We're
Yeah, and there's a question of, what's the goal?
So we have
Sorry.
25 in 3 classrooms
Yeah.
and 24 in 1 classroom, which
You
says
could
to
take
me-
one more student and be at your max.
Well, no, I would say.
Sorry, I'm wrong. That one student will push us over the max. Sorry, I was doing my math
It's
wrong.
less than 25, right?
Well, and
Thank God we don't have to get into this level, because it wouldn't be our job, really.
Yes.
It's also an average, so it's not that each classroom has to meet that, it's
Some
the
are above,
average.
so,
Yeah.
Yeah, some are above.
Which is why you have.
I might not
you know,
put it right down.
students, you know.
So moved.
So I'm curious to ask if there was any consideration, since it's a student that maybe hasn't even registered yet, whether there was a consideration of hiring a half-time person who would be there for reading and math, let's say, and because it's only one student over the limit.
I think that's a question, though. I mean, what's our goal? Is our goal to kind of stay in the optimal green zone, or is it to stay absolutely positively as close to the red line as we
Our
can?
goal is to be
Well,
supposed to
that's Steve.
optimal. The word
Yes.
optimal indicates
Yeah.
that's where you want to be.
I want to correct myself earlier. I found my notes from we are at 100 right now. We are not at 99. We're at 100.
So, yeah,
that's
so we
25.
are at max.
We
right
are
now.
at 25.
That's,
I move
that's
to
what,
approve that
that's.
the administration
that's what
hire
I'm
one
saying.
FTE
Makes
for the
sense.
remainder of the school year for Main Street Middle School.
Second.
I was even quicker.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions?
Can I ask another question about the enrollment, which is unrelated to the middle school? So this shows that the high school has 60 more kids in it this year than it had last year. How's that going? I mean, I'm just like, that's a lot more kids in the building, is that?
It's like 2/3 of grade.
It's a 20%
A lot
increase
of
in
kids
the building.
A lot of kids enrolled this summer.
My kid's
Are
impressed
there-
by the difference.
Yeah?
Really?
Yeah, in the feel of the school.
Do they like it better?
She's just like, there's so many kids.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a big increase. It's
No, it's-
Are there
it's
any
good.
issues
It's a
with
20%
things
increase.
like lockers or sports teams or,
Our capacity
you know,
is
capacity
500.
for,
I don't
other
know.
than,
I couldn't answer that question. I don't know.
We did figure it out a few years ago that the high school capacity is 500. So like the
Like, we're still way under it.
cafeteria and the auditorium, I think maybe holds 600, which gives you 500 students and the associated adults,
yeah.
if I remember correctly.
So I'm curious to know, given that.
Although
big-
we've changed the number of seats in the auditorium, so.
Just a little bit.
Just a
No,
little.
no, I think we took it. It ended up being like 1 or 2 rows. It's not a considerable amount.
So it's definitely more kids, but it seems like it.
The
seems
building
like
can
they should
handle
fit.
it.
Maybe not at lunch. I don't, I've heard lunch.
I've heard
might
they
be
can't all
a little
They don't all
crowded.
go to
fit
lunch
in the
at the same
cafeteria
time,
for
so.
lunch.
But there are only 2 lunch periods, so.
I
They
know.
seem to fit.
I haven't seen anybody standing while they do.
They also eat all over the school.
That's what I mean. I've
You know,
heard
they're
that
not
feel
all
like there's
there.
not
They go
enough room.
outside.
Yeah.
You go outside, some eat under the stairs, so, you know, like.
That sounds awful.
You know what? Yeah,
They're all
saying
over the place.
Dropping their food everywhere.
So I'm curious to ask, given all those numbers, so for example, in Algebra 2, first semester, you have 4 classes.
Yes.
One with 8, one with 5, one with 6, one with 8. At the very least, why weren't the first 2 combined to be 13 and the next 2 combined to be 14?
So it's a scheduling issue. It's with a small school and a limited amount of people teaching each class and the amount of classes that are offered to kids. Kids put in their preferences in April for what they want to take. And then Power School has an algorithm to try to get rid of conflicts. And because Power School does most of that for us, right? To try to get rid of conflicts. Now, this is an area that I was talking to Renee just today about. And she's like, I want to dig into this more to understand why things are happening. However, things like chorus and band and those kind of things are only offered at very certain times because they're shared between schools. And so it gets to the point where things have to be offered at the same time. And so kids can't all go into, if they have to take algebra, they can't go into it because one class because they're taking chorus as well.
It's a choice. When you get smaller, you, to be economical, you don't have as many choices.
Can I just interject, though, that I had this understanding, at least from geometry, that there are math classes where honors and regular class are the same class. And I
Yes.
wouldn't rule out the possibility that this algebra class and the Algebra 2 honors class could be the same class, because geometry runs that way.
It could very well be that way. And this
It's
is
the
how
same
Power School-
class, same teacher. Some kids are doing the honors version and some kids are not.
It
And
very well
geometry
could
looks the
be
same way.
Because of how Power School prints it out. This is a printout from Power School, so you.
Yes.
you
Yes,
very well
this is
could
the
be
way math class
correct.
That's the way math works.
So there-
That some kids
That
are
would be
being
helpful
honest
to
and
know,
others are
because
not.
when the community looks at this and says, you have 4 classes, and
Yeah.
the biggest one has 8, and the lowest one has 5.
I think they might be sitting in the same class
They-
with the
they are.
other Algebra 2 class.
They are, for sure, guaranteed.
Okay, yeah, because that's how
Well, it'd be
geometry
nice
works.
to know. This is what I'm saying.
I move to adjourn. Non-debatable.
Is there only 10 of these?
Do you have anything else you want to talk about in terms of class size?
We with my motion first.
I
No one
second.
second.
So I have to try
Wait a
to,
second.
Is,
Trying to be
is,
polite.
is the-
well, I'm trying to make sure that I can get a second.
I think it's
Do we have
too
some-
bad to cut off conversation about small classes at the high school when we've spent a lot of years talking about those small
Let's put it on the
classes.
agenda.
Yeah.
Pardon me?
It is on, but it was on.
It is on the agenda.
Small classes in the high school?
NHS class size is
NHS
on the
class size is
agenda.
on
Yeah,
the
it's on the
agenda.
agenda. It just doesn't have small in front of it.
And I don't think that's why it's on the agenda. I think it's on the agenda because we're concerned about the size of some, we're concerned about the largeness rather than the smallness.
I mean, it seems like
I don't know, why was it on the agenda?
Well, I mean, I guess my thought on small, I mean, the high school's growing, we've got a bubble coming through.
Right.
I think the time to have a discussion about, small classes and consolidating is when we're trends going the other way.
But it is on the agenda, so I was just trying
It is
to,
on the
why
agenda.
is it on the agenda? It's not, I'm not
I was
concerned that they're
asking, someone
small.
wanted a review of what the class sizes were, and,
Oh, okay.
that's.
Got it, okay.
And I think it's good to know coming in.
Yeah.
And it seems like the information we get is more representative of how it's represented in the Power School world than
Yeah.
what is actually sitting in various classes.
Yes, and this gets into administrative minutia, but the board should keep in mind that our data manager who did run Power School is no longer with us. We had challenges at his leaving. We have a brand-new person running Power School now. The guidance team relied on the old person, or the person who was previously in that position, to run the scheduling. And we have a new principal who is very much looking into some of these questions that you're asking. So,
Yeah, but I mean, the average class size is 21.7. That's,
Which is
Kind of a sweet spot.
Yeah.
seems, seems
Sounds
really.
like.
Super.
I talked to some educators.
My sense is the classes are large.
Seconded that
They
motion.
prefer, they were saying like 18 to
Remember that?
22 is the sweet spot. High school teachers. I'm sure someone would like, it totally depends on the class that you're teaching.
My sense is that the classes are big.
I presented
So,
to a class last
I
week
think
that was only
we're
like
doing
8
great.
million.
That's because it's an elective.
Oh, is that why?
Yeah.
So. Do we have a second from Mr. Minchin's
There was.
motion?
I seconded it a while back.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Freshman classes are big.
Yeah.
My dog.
And we're looking at 451 in like 3-4 years from now.
The open house line for a couple of the teachers said they were the largest classes they've ever heard, which is not small classes. It's sizes for a while, so there's some adjustment.
Yeah.
Having 22 or 23.
Yeah.
I think it ends up being.
And it totally depends on the class. Like sometimes it's nice to have